portfolio showcase. And here we have our guest speakers who are also former design students here at Sac State. This is Kit. And right here is Bekah. Please welcome them. Woo! You guys would like to introduce yourselves?
Hi everyone, thanks for having us and thanks for being here. I was GRID's president last academic year, and so I saw the transition from the virtual world to the real world. I'm used to having meetings of like 3 people. I currently work for a company called Health Access California. Basically, we write policy that makes healthcare more affordable and accessible. So we got Medi-Cal expanded to cover undocumented immigrants last year as one example of what we do. I also worked at CalPERS after graduating. And here I worked at ASI as a graphic designer for 2 years while I got my BFA. And also, I'm a Virgo, I'm non-binary and autistic, and I have a beautiful pit bull that I rescued from Front Street named Pretzel. She is a traumatized reactive dog in recovery, so she's a special.
No, my name is Bekah. I'm having trouble finding a way to make my computer on because I'm hearing that. But anyway, my name is Bekah. Right now, I am working as a designer. Like the structures that they have to the shelf placards for formats or anything like that. Additionally, I also do packaging, so that's since we're a winery, we do a lot of wine labels. But we also have convenience and seltzers, like Tiny, for example, is within our portfolio. So, get friends, or we can do something serious. So, a lot of different work, a lot of types of work. I'm always very busy, but it's been a lot of fun to do. So that's where I work. I also graduated last year. I'm a Capricorn.
Oh, my pronouns are they, them. The one time I forget. A cis girl remember. True ally.
I'm just gonna ignore it. Really the So the plan is portfolio review also to set that tone. So what Kit and I have decided to do is kind of walk through our websites and questions that we had while we jobs, and then how we answered those questions for ourselves, the projects that were really successful in interviews, all of that type of information that, you know, it's over. So my website has not been touched since graduation. So yeah, I've really not touched anything. I think I added a few like research areas, which I'll dig into. So going on to, oh, am I not trying to speak more? Oh, I stopped. Okay, you're good. Here is my website. This is the designs, is where all my projects are. Generally speaking, a lot of professors and professors will have a recommend kind of arranging it in a way that projects are most excited about because they'll be pulling something first. Another rule of thumb that I discovered is that you will usually get hired for one project. I think people looking at my website saw one project and decided from that. Like they didn't really look at more. They said yes or no. Anyway, so the questions that we have on the board. 1, what job do you want? Going after graduation, I knew that I wanted to do something that had something to do with like a 360 view of design. So I was interested in UX, something that had a lot of different avenues, not just necessarily look good, but have to be functional. Along in that, under that umbrella is also packaging and product design, product innovation, and research. I was a big fan of, because I hate researching anything that is not design related. But if it's design related, I really like design. So that's the type of job that I want. So going into what skills would be needed for that, the things that I identified were, and have discovered that now that I'm working in packaging is definitely relevant. Packaging requires being familiar with printing, and it requires a lot of file management, and not just file management like where to save your files or what links you have. It's like also managing layers and managing the file size, what size the links are in that file, because 100% someone else can open up this thing that you created, and if it's very big, they're not going to really like it. So those two things, and then understanding how to apply brand guidelines, which is a big one. And then, as all UX. So the projects that I wanted to really highlight in my were ones that used a lot of research, the ones that had a broad amount of research, a lot of intentional thinking, a lot of design. So what work do I have that shows these skills that you can apply to anything? I'm a firm believer that you can really make anything sound and feel like it relates to the field that you're working in if you construct it enough. But I think one that really shows it is a project that seniors work on in their last semester. So in Lauren's class. So
Yes.
you guys call her Kelly? We call her. Oh, it's now you? Okay.
Like, we'll just say that the class that we made this in, which you may or may not have now, is our user experience class. At the time, it was 145 UX. But we were testing out kind of a new vibe with the curriculum, and Lauren had us optionally also rebrand. So it was just really kind of like a super massive project, because you were designing a user experience where for each step, there's 5 steps, you had like 3 touch points. So if your first touch point is awareness and you're making billboards, you're making 3 billboards. If it's a landing page, you're making 3 landing pages. Simultaneously, you're researching the brand and redesigning the brand. So it's a very big project.
Mm-hmm.
This is the touch point.
Yep.
Well,
Yep.
that's why we're probably.
Oh, cool. I got my national page. So on my website, it is just very visual. So it's going into the branding that I did, going into the social media campaign, going into we did a little touch point page. So this is how to purchase the parking permit, and then going into wayfinding and signage, and then lastly following on merchandise. So that's all that I show on my website. I have a little button in a lot of my projects that say you research, case study, you read, do whatever. That's really, really important. Please, if you have research, you can make it up afterwards. I'm serious. Like, just show that you're proving what you made, because people really, really like that. And it shows that you can do like more, or you didn't just get lucky. I hate that term, but just half the time you do something, you really like it, and then you deconstruct it to research it and prove it. So either way, showing your intention behind your research, very good.
Well, and also, like, I'll add that research isn't always what we're used to in our previous experiences in education. Like, if you made something, you likely researched it in one way or another, even if that was that you saw 5 different photos on your feed that day that gave you different ideas. So if you can, like Bekah saying, like, it's not about making it up, but it's about investigating, oh, what did I like about those? Like, it's all there. It's just asking the questions and then laying it out for people so that they can understand your processing too.
Mm-hmm. A lot of these methods that are in this, hopefully this page, that are on this research document page are things that I use for research methods in my day-to-day job when we're doing these types of product innovation or if we're doing offsites and doing a competitive market, like these are actually relevant techniques. I enjoyed these in class. I thought it was fun, but I really didn't think I learned it to work, and I actually do this for work. So this is a very relevant project. It goes into the introduction, contents here, just like a little overview. We've got the type points, we've got it all. I chose to do a little setting the scene, and this was basically me saying, here's the problem, just tell a story that's roughly my experience, and all the problems with it. And from then on, it is me researching and solving that problem with the focus on with the UX question. All the strategies. Half of this feels like jargon, but it's actually very applicable when you're starting to conclude things and tie it all together. You find yourself going back to those points and drawing them into your conclusion, and it just makes everything feel so much stronger. And it makes you feel more proud of your work. Like at the end, when I'm concluding something, I'm pulling in all the stuff that I mentioned way back in the beginning. It makes me feel like such a good designer, and that there really was a problem that I solved, which is what other people want. So I show my sketch. Sketches are really good. You don't even have to be good at sketching, and showing your sketches it's just a fun little peek behind the curtain. It doesn't have to be at the forefront, but even if people have to dig from, it's just fun to do and get to discover.
Plus, all sketches look cool once they're scanned and on a website.
Yeah, that's true too. And it makes the finished product feel really cool.
I mean, your sketches look cool in any context, but I'm just
Oh,
saying
yeah.
that if you're self-conscious about them, seeing them in a digital environment, sometimes you're like, okay.
So like this is the parking sign. When you scan the parking sign, it brings you to the touch point where you're purchasing the parking pass, and then it's going to the next page. The little fingers pointing to the buttons that you click, and it says thanks for here's your confirmation. So this is all the research. This is very long. I'm not going to go over it all because I'd rather show off a different project where I also use this techniques, but for work. So this is the school project, and this is 100% the reason I was hired for my job. I was not sure about that, but here's the people who interviewed me. And they enjoyed my research. They were fine. I do illustrations and drawings, so they enjoyed this. So for work, I'm an intern still. I've been expected.
But a paid.
I am a
intern.
paid intern. Yes, this is a paid deal, and it is paid above minimum wage. I do not feel like an intern. I'm often playing design lead on a lot of these projects that I'm working on. So they treat me well. And part of that is because there's another intern who's with me, and we both have been graduated. We have all of our time stress. So they see that. That's a good place. If you guys want to get a job working with other designers, is really good. I work with 40 other designers, and they can be my art directors, or they can be my colleagues. So this is Dawdle. I recently did this presentation. I was so nervous to get this because it felt like I was putting all of my work as a designer into like 10 minutes and talking to the entirety of the design team. So terrifying to give, but very good to give. So this is, my intern project where I wanted to, I had to locate a white space that exists in create this imaginary product. So they do a lot of wine, they do some RTDs or ready to drink cocktails. So they do break in the wine category, but usually not. They've not tested any mixer. It's hard to be competitive with mixer. So this whole thing was saying how to do it. And I use my superpower of being technically unseen. People eat that up. Don't mind. They're like, you must know everything.
The privilege of youth.
We know, yeah. They're like, what's trending? I don't know.
Age of
So, so it goes into the brief, similar to what you guys see on projects. It goes into target audience, it goes into challenges. So the brief that I created for myself after receiving this project was to create a series of cocktail syrups targeted towards a younger new to drinking audience that enables consumers to mix and match mixers easily to have fun, unique experience. I use the air fryer as one of my examples for how to like advertise and things because air fryer is not new technology. Mixers aren't new technology. An air fryer is basically a convection of mix and green light to steam Eastern here, and I'm doing the exact same thing. or I was attempting. So, going into stores, this was paid time. I reached that. And took some pictures of aisles. So this is the mixer aisle, very crowded. I found out that repetition is a great thing. So that's also design principle, very basic. Literally repetition is a great way to stand out on a shelf. So products with more varietals will stand out and like, oh sweet, okay, that grabs my eye. Additionally, there's a lot of unexpected. Tin is a non-alcoholic ready-to-drink beverage, so here is like these 3 bottles that I decided to use as my main competitors. I only saw this recently, the first time on Saturday, in person. So you find it, line it up. At Gallo, I was like kind of funded. They would give me their resources, so I was able to use their models, I was able to use their printers and the Mandy's marketing downstairs, who does all of the mock-ups. So when we print something, we want to see what it looks like in store. Make it physical. So like I actually have these, I have 3 of these bottles at home on my desk. So this is the New Amsterdam bottle. The New Amsterdam's in Gal's portfolio. This is the 200 milliliter bottle, so it's small. So I wanted to go with this to kind of downsize the experience of the cocktail mixer, so you don't have too much of it. So it's problem not solving. And then mood boards. This is probably my biggest learning curve. Not only was I kind of iffy on making mood boards to begin with during school, it's also hard to design strictly mood boards. That was, and I'm still working on it.
Wait, so are these mood boards provided to you?
No, I did all this work myself. So this is like mood boards, this is me off Pinterest kind of stuff.
Oh,
And they're bigger
but
mood
you're just
boards.
saying that sometimes you have to design to someone else's mood board.
Yes, yeah. Sometimes I'll be provided mood boards because like if we do private labels where another company wants to come and have their product packaged, then we'll have someone create a research deck. I've created some of those decks, or I've been the one designing after someone's created those decks. So it can go both ways. But when you're given a mood board and they're saying, okay, we have this, we call them territories, we have this territory, and you get designed in this mood board. And if you leave it, then you're no longer listening to the client because you're not designing them. So it's really important to be able to find mood boards and design for the mood board because that shows that you're listening and it's giving the client what they want. Also, it's based on the research that someone worked really hard to do. So it's not just making a bottle look pretty based on what I've gotten the design actually really proud of, go all the way through and I got information out for one label. Yeah, it's really exciting. But I hated the design. Like I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it. It wasn't like something I was like, it's fine. I enjoy it. I think it looks cool. It's not like a label I've seen. But it was strictly to the I did not venture it and I thought it looked really strange. All of us thought it was strange. But the client really liked it. So that's what they wanted. So designing to mood boards is really important. I'm off my soapbox. So when I was designing, I wanted to do something really like sort of like technical components, especially since I could use Martin downstairs because he would go in and emboss and gloss things and make things sparkly for me. So I was really excited to like get to actually try to do that with him. So these are the bottles that I am start to tell. This is all embossed here on the paper, so it looks like a textured paper. And then it breaks the frame. This is the foil. These are cut out with a utility knife. So I did not create custom dies for this because that would be incredibly expensive. It was $10,000. So no custom dies. But this is what I created for the project. It was really fun. It was fun to be able to like figure out how to get the correct color for these, figure out how to match the tone of the drawings to the actual capsule. So a lot of it was me running downstairs and checking what the color looked like back upstairs. That's not the right way. Going back downstairs. So a lot of back and forth. And creative. Here it is against the other line. It's really small. And it's flat. If you've ever seen these bottles, it looks like pretty Amsterdam right now. They're everywhere. And they're like lemonade vodkas. And they're like that thick. So they're like little flats. Designing the back label. I thought it'd be fun if it like kind of opens up like the back of the medicine cabinets. Like the I did not produce the back label. I didn't want to. and I didn't. So all that to say, this is a very brief run through of this presentation. But my point is the research that you guys do in class, and the intentionality behind design speaks volumes when you hire them. Because it shows your employers that you're invested and it makes the entire experience fun for you. Because it feels like you're more invested. For me at least, I don't want to speak for everyone. Really showing intention behind your research or intention behind design with research is really important. But the reason why this is 43 megabytes is because I also have an entire where I go into like all the rest of the research and reports. But I'm going down to photography. I took pictures of these. This is stuff that I actually do for work on a day-to-day basis. This is my own project, so I would spend an hour in this for 3 months, and then I was done. So, but for actual work, we have photos and things like that. I'll do a lot of like composition sketching or stuff. So it's basically this. We make lighting notes. So finding photo inspiration for me to next slide. And writing possible lighting scenarios or blah, 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 blah. What this does is when I send these 2 pages over to Jesse's the person who does our photography, when I send it over to the person who's doing photography, I've saved them so much time because I only have 2 hours to shoot every day. And that means Jesse can set up all the lightings, he can set everything up. I can just go in and take photos. And this was the simple photography results. It's a lot of fun. He made gifts for me, which is great. Little things to do. Anyway, that is on portfolio. To answer the last question on what connections you need to make, again, I think when you strip down design to its basic form and what it is to its bare bones, you can really find a way to like anything's out. And I'll hand it off to Kit at this point.
Should we do a quick pause for cues?
Oh yeah.
Maybe a couple minutes of questions, if anyone has any.
It can be about anything. Well, this would be a not actually going to be produced. So this was something that I did on the side for me. So I presented it to all of the design. So Stephanie balanced it. That's great. Yeah. But like that's where too much going on. But when we do actual documents like this for brand innovation or especially for private labels, or we're just doing designs, it's a lot like this. We're putting the boards together, showing models, and doing design for it.
How would you summarize your typical like day-to-day? I know you mentioned you said you was having an hour and 60 positions for the is there anything else that is part of that routine?
Day-to-day changes depending on what's on my plate. Right now, it's a lot of sketching because I have a lot of projects waiting on feedback. It's the beginning of the year, so we have all of our balloons wanting to like start their new campaigns, and we have a ton of brands who are rebranding themselves. Throughout my entire internship, I would say the biggest stuff that I've been doing since I've been doing a lot of booster activation has been with Barefoot and the NFL, the partnership. So I do a lot of my work there. So a lot of my day-to-day has been looking at football things because I need to do football. But it just depends on what's on my plate. Dark Horse is another one. So right now I'm looking at horses and best troops, stuff like that. So it just ranges on what I'm working on.
Do we switch places?
Yes.
I need to. They listening.
Learning the behavior in there.
Oh, it's fine. It just makes me feel like I'm a dog. Which we and Kong just watched every single time
Marathon. Another.
This is gonna be interesting because, to be honest with you, I don't really like my website. There's a lot I would change about it, but I thought that we could just make that a fun learning opportunity. Because also, this is still the website that got me my job. Like, I really prefer my print portfolio. And I applied to other jobs where I like design specific portfolio packages for them. But this particular job, my title is digital communication specialist. So it's a lot more general than just graphic design. I also write copy for tweets and Instagram and press releases and things like that. But I will say that when I set out to make this website, I knew I wanted to work most likely in the nonprofit world. And I also knew that I wanted to work like not for a creative agency, right? I wanted to be like an in-house designer for an organization that was doing meaningful work. And so I knew that my website needed to show a huge range of skills. Because going into the nonprofit industry, I'm just trying to prove that I can pretty much anything you need me to do. Which also made it kind of difficult because when you have such a like general prompt for your portfolio, it's like, well, how do I decide what to go in here? But so yeah, I just went for a nice like charcuterie board of the different projects that I have. But I honestly have so much work that's not even on here, and every single day the weight of it is just on my shoulders, and I'm like, I really need to update my website. And here we are. Okay, so I told you about the job I wanted. I wanted to work for a nonprofit. Nonprofits infamously don't have money, understaffed, you know, no resources. So I was like, whatever, I'm down to grind. And autism, so the hyper focus. What skills I needed for that job? Again, everything. When I started going to school, I actually went to school to be an English teacher. So I also had a background in writing, and from the projects that I did here at Sac State, I also really enjoyed writing the copy for them. You can, there's like a picture book up here that I wrote based off of an essay. So I actually did include samples of my writing from like my junior year writing intensive when I applied for this job. Also, this is my mark. It's really adorable. It just makes me happy to look at it. I just inserted it into my email signature because more people need to see. You can see that on my website and pretty much all of my collateral, I'm being like obnoxiously loud about my pronouns, which is a piece of advice that I give around any like marginalized identity that obviously you hold important, is like just start with that. Because if they aren't on board with it, it's not the right fit. Like there's no way that you can do good creative work and like not fully show up as yourself. But even saying that now, I'm like, I totally, you know, you do your best to be yourself, but then you kind of lose it sometimes. So they know that I'm queer, they know that I'm trans, they respect my pronouns, and those are all like non-negotiables for me. Health Access California is like the larger parent network, but then we have like a sibling organization called the California LGBTQ Health and Human Services Network. The longest name, the longest acronym. But so that being said, like my entire company is very queer. And also, like, there's a lot of Latina people. I just happen to work for the one white woman named Rachel, so. I put my best project first. I'm really proud of this layout. And it's also about like a gender pioneer. So if people want to talk about the content, I'm like, let's talk about the content. But if you just want to talk about how sick it looks, that's cool too. One thing that I really regret about my website after, side note, recently I attended a conference called Creating Change in San Francisco, which is a national summit for queer activists working in the nonprofit world. And they had a digital communications training institute where they talked about website design, basically. It was really cool. They had a creative agency meeting, so I was like, cool. But people actually spend more time on mobile websites than they do on desktop. It's like 10% more. So really, when we're designing websites, if we're actually considering the user experience, we want to be centering the mobile experience. You'll notice that these images are beautiful, large, horizontal images. How do you think that looks on your iPhone? Tiny. Yeah, tiny. So it always just feels really underwhelming to me when I get on my mobile site and there's like a few icons that are like the width of my screen and you can see them. And then I have these like larger works that you just can't see the details of. So one of the things that I would like to do is think about how I can creatively cut this up so that you're getting full screen snippets of it on your phone. I spent 2 years at ASI and it was amazing. That's why I thought I wanted to work in a nonprofit and be the only designer. I mean, at ASI, we had a team of designers, but we didn't have a leader. So it was really fun to be in community there, but I love not having a creative director to like tell us what to do. I really miss working with other designers. It is very lonely being the only designer at my job. We have a 2-person communications department and my boss like worked in a legislator's office. So there's just not a lot of anyways, a huge amount of work came from ASI. This is one of the things I did for our 65th anniversary. I designed a campaign, which is one of the things that got me hired because 1 week into starting my job at Health Access, they said, oh, you know, we actually have our 35th anniversary a month from today. So do you think that you could design an identity and the program and all the signage and all the merchandise? And also, we're not going to get you the copy until literally the night before the deadline. We're talking executive directors and emails at 2 a.m. Nonprofit world, yeah. I will also say that I'm a salary employee, which means that I do not make overtime. That being said, I only have to work for 4 hours and 45 minutes to count it as a full day of work, if that makes sense. So on any given day, I could take off 2 hours early and I don't have to like report that as time off for you. I also get 1 hour lunches and 2 weeks of paid time off at Christmas, not including the vacation time outside of it. And all of my health insurance premiums are fully paid. So I will write very honestly about the struggle of the nonprofit industry, but at the same time, like, there are a lot of benefits to it. Especially for me having good health insurance, I just knew that was required. This was the simpler logo that I made. And again, just talking them through like what the purpose each of these solves is, because these people who are interviewing me like don't know what they want at all. They don't think about it in this way. They're just like, oh, we have an event. So that's kind of where the making connections question comes in, is when you're like, oh, you know what? If you guys are having your 35th anniversary, we could do something like this and we could make a pin out of it. But then if you wanted to do tote bags, we could use a larger, more complex design. And that's one of the biggest pieces of feedback I got from my interview, was that my concrete examples were extremely helpful for helping them understand like what I did. This is a passion project of mine, New York City. When I started this project right after the pandemic hit, I was like so grumpy because it took so much of my time. I started like just full speed ahead, being the creative department for a little business that was trying to stand on its own 2 feet. But I really fucking loved it, and I did it with my best friend, and I felt like I could really bring my identity to it. Like, it's all about being queer and weird and neurodivergent and finding community in that. And the reason I say that is because in hindsight, like, I have such a massive body of work from everything that I've done for this. This is like really just a tiny sample of it. And it's one of the things that I reference most, like just on a daily basis at my job. And I'm like, oh yeah, like when we got pins made for Weird City, here's what I did. Or when we were creating a promo around a new storybook copy, here's what I did. So even though it was unpaid, I genuinely was very, very passionate about it, and I'm not gonna say you should do spec work ever, but this is the closest I would say I got to that, and there was some value. Because also, like, the company was paying to produce merchandise that I was making. So I got, like, t-shirts and tote bags and boxes and packaging out of it, and I didn't have to put the money forward. More ESI. And this is the other thing about websites, is like, notice when you're going through it, when you start to scroll faster, and that's when it means you need to cut stuff out. So when I go through my portfolio, I'm like, okay, I'm tired. We got more to go. This is too much. Even flipping through it, I have 8 projects in my printed book, and there's a point where I'm like watching the viewer, and I'm like, this needs to end. So editing is very powerful, and again, I meant to look up the actual number, but people spend seconds on a page on your website. They probably spend 30 seconds like on your website in its entirety. So the more intentional you are about the information that you're giving them, the more control you have over their experience. Because if you're just like, here's a million things to look at, go crazy, you have no idea what they're actually getting. See, this, like Becca was talking about, this is my user experience project. It was also a large part of getting hired. They asked me, this is a nice page. That's the other thing. I used Cargo to build my website, and in the instructions, oh, maybe it's the internet. Maybe it's not my website.
It could be. Ruh-roh.
Oh, there it is. Look at that. Horrible. Horrible lag. So yeah, I used Pargo to build it, and Pargo was like, upload your 300 DPI DMYK images. And I was like, that is so strange, but like, okay. Oh.
You are.
I know, Sharon.
Desktop view. Back to action, B.
Okay. 300 DPI images on my website. I thought they were gonna like automatically resize them somehow. Like I thought they had a magic software that was their recommendation. But no, they certainly didn't. And it's very slow to load. So that's another chore that I need to do is resize all of my images for web. And something to consider when you're designing your print and your digital portfolio, every time you export an image, you should have an export for print and an export for web. So that when you're like putting them all together, it's all just ready to be placed. Because nothing is more frustrating than every single time you want to put a goddamn project that you finished in your portfolio going, I need to make about 3 different image sizes of it for the different ones. I mean, this logo, it's just beautiful. I just love it so much. The type, the texture. I illustrated that little handkerchief, and I feel like this is so easy. And then, sorry, let me move this over here. Should have done that long ago. These are the wayfinding things that I made. Okay, so in my interview, right, they were like, how would you design a campaign around surprise ambulance billing? And I was like, what the fuck does that mean? Because, and again, they asked me, so how much experience do you have with the legislative process? And I said, I don't have any experience. Like, it would be a growing pain for sure. But what I can tell you is that no matter what the subject of the campaign is, what's important is making it look cohesive so that people understand that the messaging that they're seeing is coming from a credible source. And then I showed them my Sacramento Antique Fair user experience, which has nothing to do with health policy. But they don't have to be designers to know that it's cohesive and that it makes sense to them, even if they don't understand why. So again, like the visuals and the examples are very helpful. These are just some illustrations. Illustrating brings me a lot of joy, and so I tend to post mostly like my hand-drawn illustrations on Instagram. But lately, again, I'm looking on Instagram. My boss told me, she was like, I just stalked your Instagram. And I'm like, it's public, so that's that's acceptable. But it literally doesn't have like design projects on it. Like it's not, for lack of a better word, it's not like, it's like my little kid drawings that I do in therapy. So again, in terms of like regrets, I wish I spent more time building my portfolio on Instagram. I didn't want to do it because who has the goddamn time? But I need to, so we'll get there. This is something that I think like no non-designer will ever understand on any level, like what this is.
It's ditzy.
But it looks pretty. Yeah. I spend a lot of time at my job just like explaining to people what I do. It's exhausting. This is actually my first go at my logo, but then, you know, people change. And then I think this is the last project, finally. So I designed this like before it went to print, and then when it went to print, I was like, wow, there are so many parameters that I didn't consider when I was making up my design and my imagination. So I just basically included some commentary that said, hey, printing, there's a lot of rules to it. And then I said, here's what I did with those rules. Because again, in conclusion, one of the most important skills I bring to the table at my nonprofit job is that I have experience making merchandise and print material. Because pretty much any company that ever existed anywhere is at some point gonna want some dumb clicky pens with their logo on it. And you gotta know how to talk to the printer and get that made. They also recently ordered business cards with rounded corners, and I was like truly so horrified at the corners. They were cut with like a dull blade and like too many in a stack, you know, so the edges were like hella frayed. And like coming from the program, you're like, this is blasphemy. Like I'm like, I would not have graduated if my corners looked like this. I was about to bring my corner cutter in there and redo all 1,600 cards. So I basically just reached out to the print shop and I flexed my jargon. And I was just like, here's what these look like to me. They're unacceptable. You need to refund us the upcharge for the rounded corners, and you need to make us new ones that don't suck. And they said, okay. So they reprinted and recut the entire job and refunded us up. And my company was like, oh, sure. Some stuff. Like, I'm like, yes, motherfuckers, I know a lot of things. Just not that much about policy. Which I guess needs to get people in that industry to respect you. Whatever, I'll just be the silly gay. It's about how things look. Okay. I think that is most of what I wanted to touch on. That's my whole portfolio. I will open to questions, but also I brought pretty much like everything that was at my spring show. So if you want to take a look, take recommendations on where to get things printed.
One thing that comes to mind, what would be your advice for seniors preparing their spring week?
Ahead of time. Literally, if you have any time ahead, just do it. That's my advice.
I did start printing like immediately. I started with my print deadlines and was like, what is the latest that I can have things printed? And then I subtracted 2 weeks because I knew that like being me, that other issues would arise. And then that's how I prioritized my work, because I was like so all through school over ambitious. I was like, in like the Great British Bake Off, I'm the one that's like, I'm doing a 7-tier cake and I'm sculpting it out of fondant. And that's really fun in my life. And the judges are just like that was Richard Fat to me. But like lovingly, he just let me be myself. And I was like, listen, I know my therapist tells me all the time I'm doing too much. So I just, I prioritize. That's what you do when you have ADHD. You're like, what's the hardest deadline? Printing, right? If I send things late to print, they're not getting printed. That's it. And then from there, working to meet all of those deadlines, I was like, whatever I have time for at the end for extra sauce. But also, obviously, you have to manage like your current homework and assignments. So it's like 2 priorities are print materials, current homework and assignments. Your website is like the last thing because you have the most time to work on it because you can be making changes up to the second before the spring show.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think it feels scary to start, and I think that was my big thing with working on getting stuff ready for spring show. Was like it just felt terrifying to actually start producing it. Because I was terrified to see how it would look, and I was like, if I don't like this I'm done so. And you know, so it can be hard to like actually start printing it out and start finalizing these files because for me, my perfectionism was really getting in the way. So once I started printing things out and cutting them out, you know, a sigh of relief. I was like, oh, this is doable. I don't hate what I've done. This is okay. But yeah.
And also, I would like to add that printing is expensive and be realistic about your budget. For me personally, I always knew that printing seemed to be expensive, and so I saved a portion of my student funds for that. And in my mind, I told myself, like, it's like buying a laptop or some kind of software that you need to do the design. But if you don't have money to spend on printing, then don't spend your money on printing. Like, we had someone who literally just put their portfolio out on the table. And it's like, it's super fun. Like, don't get me wrong, if you can afford it to invest in making all these materials real. But is it gonna make or break your career? Absolutely. Like, my boss still has not seen my portfolio.
Same.
Yeah, like,
Not
when,
touched
do you
it
think I
since
show
we
up with the goddamn trash bag? When I do an shit that I made? Like, no, this lives in a box in my closet. So I think it's just about, again, figuring out where your priorities are and like not stressing too much because it's gonna feel stressful, but it's really all just made up.
Thank you for all the tips because I'm really feeling like everything is coming at me.
Yeah.
Like we only have about 2 months left, but for forest class, we can't.
That is the appropriate time to start thinking about printing.
Yeah, exactly. And Ford is making us like do sketches of our spring show table setup.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah.
That's pretty wild.
So
I mean, I did that, but that's because I was trying hard.
No, I just showed up with all my shit. Like, smoked a little weed before, take this like you're good. Assignment.
Yeah, so we have to, so I think that in a way he's kind of helping us to prepare a little bit on sketching out what our layout will be. Also, he specifically said that our website has to be done for our one-on-one interviews.
Oh.
So we don't
Yeah.
have until spring show to.
Okay, that deadline's actually fair, 'cause I had the same, you didn't have that same thing, I did with Pratt.
I think we may have, but Marissa was kind of charging our class like ahead on deadlines anyway, so I'm not sure.
But the point still stands of like, you have more time to digital stuff because of the media.
Right.
Yeah.
And also, again, like, yeah, you have your mock interview and like you're gonna get a grade based on it, but you still have time before, let's say that you're like, oh, the spring show, everyone's gonna take my business card, everyone's gonna visit my website, and that's how I'm gonna get around. Then that should be what matters to you more than your interview for a grade. But if, you know what I mean, priorities.
Yeah.
Take it one day.
All the days at once, come on. Yeah. I will say I am glad to be able to clock out. That is something I'm very grateful for because I don't have homework. So when you get to that point, I understand the stress of like waking up and being like, I have this assignment to do. So I'm glad to not be there anymore. But yeah. Yeah. There's just always something in the back of your head. Yeah.
But I just set my time boundaries, like for myself and my works. I'm like, what are you gonna do? And also I just know that like, for me, if I don't set those boundaries, I will literally find a way to work 12 hours every single day, no matter what. Like, there's always stuff to do. And I do feel that pressure. Like, in my 9 to 5 time when I'm supposed to be working, I fucking work because there's a lot of shit to do. But then I'm like, my dog needs me. Like, she is so needy and so cuddly.
and I can't just be glued to a screen all the time. So I shut that shit down and I go outside for a walk, and then by the time I get back, I'm like, I'm so tired. I'm not gonna work now.
Mhm.
And then that's just the reality. And I'm like, if I ever have to do something today, I guess I'll deal with the shame tomorrow.
What barrier do you have to encounter during the process of applying to the job and right now?
Well, I mean, searching for a job in general is just like a full-time job. It's so much work to do, especially if you're working. So I was already at CalPERS working full-time, in a paid internship. And I was also applying to jobs, particularly through the state. It's like a lot of hoops you have to jump through. This job was not a feat. I would say that in the interview process, they were very accepting of my identities and my disabilities because that's the image of the organization. But in my day-to-day experience, the barriers are real. Like, I constantly feel like my boss is talking down to me because I have ADHD. And in my interview process, I'm like, these are my disabilities, these are the things I struggle with. Like, I will never stop making typos and deadlines because that is how my brain works. Yet I feel like when I make typos and deadlines, there's still judgment attached to it. I just think generally, like, there are certain people who they just let their ego get in the way of like being able to collaborate genuinely together. But I mean, I just talked to my deputy director, and I was like, I feel like my boss is bullying me. And there's like support there, but it's also ongoing.
Sorry to hear that it was so even. I wanted to call it. Would it be considered corporate?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, corporate.
I mean, yeah, actually, I don't know. I'm like, are nonprofits?
Feels like a corporation.
They're an organization. But yeah,
Or I would say professional. Professional. Have this stuff. It's kind of like issues happen in the middle. There's like then like movements trying to raise parents.
yeah,
Identities and certain capabilities that should be not be treated as like totally different.
yeah. Well, like, and that's the thing is, I like, for example, I've really been struggling recently because we're in like the peak of the legislative session, which means that there's a lot of like policy documents going around. And with ADHD, like, I basically need time to read a document like 5 times through before I can actually comprehend what it's saying. But I'm so busy, like, tasking with all of the other shit that I have to do. I don't feel like I have time to learn new concepts. And so, like, I brought that up to my boss, and I was like, hello. And she was like, yeah, well, you're not the only one that feels that way. And honestly, like, my brain wasn't always this way, but I'm a mom and I was able to train it. And I was like, oh. I wish I had thought about just changing my brain. And then again, it's like, even we have like technically a queer organization in-house, but like my boss is still like a cis white blonde lady who kind of gives like turf energy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening.
That's why I honestly am such an advocate of being able to, if you're able to, sometimes it just doesn't work out and that's totally okay. But the ability to work with other designers who can is a privilege.
Yeah, but even working with other designers like helpers, like on a team of 11 designers, I face the same like
Oh, yeah.
ableism and transphobia. And like it's not, it's never ill-intended, but it's just like if you're marginalized, then people outside of that can't conceptualize like what they're choosing to.
You feel oppressed at work.
Yeah, I really do. By my boss. To me, like leadership is about like Richard Pratt is a leader. Like that man is like, let me help you be yourself. Let me give you the tools that you need to find your own way. Like leadership is understanding that everybody is so different and that is so valuable. And my boss is like, she just has a narrow view of what perfectionism is. And she cares a lot about what other people think. And so she puts that onto me. And then I'm like, why are my feelings hurting? Just because you're insecure. And also she privately shuts down my ideas and then takes credit for them in meetings as her own. Yeah.
That
So-
must add another burden to one of your current schedule. Sounds like a really busy schedule.
Yeah. It'll be better though. And I mean, as soon as I started realizing how bad I felt emotionally, I reached out for help to HR, which you can't always trust HR. They're in the business of protecting the company and not you. But I happen to have a friend who works in HR that I felt safe talking to. And then the deputy director of my company is a queer person who's like very familiar with disability justice. And so I felt really safe going to her. Because it's like you gotta at least try. My boss, I don't think needs to be the way that she is, but I'm just like, Rachel, you need therapy. And I already did my 5 years in counting, so you just keep those negative vibes to yourself. I'll be over here.
So,
Yeah. Easy.
Sorry to get heavy, but I guess it's maybe good to know.
It feels like you need to give up part of you to be able to do the dark side.
Yeah, it feels like I have to mask to like get people's respect, but I decided a long time ago that I would tolerate assholes. I would rather tolerate assholes disrespecting me than pretend to be something that I'm not for their like bullshit opinions. As long as like I'm like, you guys can't fire me, so that's my privilege, I guess.
Yeah, the stereotypes, they're still a thing.
Yeah.
Today in the 20%, still got a long way to go.
Oh, totally. Yeah, people are like there's this like meme about autism that's like, before I told people I was autistic, they were like, why are you so weird? And then when you tell them you're autistic, they're like, why are you so normal? Because it's like, right, you have this like perception of what autism is. And you don't fit the stereotype. So then people just stereotype you differently. And then you throw being non-binary in there. Unless people it's just made up. I'm just a silly little boy living in my silly plans.
I still think as as a designer, you have to pay for, making certain rights, that you identify with. Because I feel like when you're out in the world, I still think that's a good part to be invested in. So in a way that makes me think about how what I'm going to advocate for when I'm in this country.
Yeah.
How I use, like, the question that I think about from time to time is how am I going to use my skills to serve a community. And something that comes to mind is like for my culture, like most of my projects right now, or not, I won't say most, but the one that I'm currently doing for Kelly's, for example, the touch point journey. I decided that I would do it based on a small family-owned Asian grocery store. So I thought that, yeah, so I thought like in a way, these projects also give me some sort of connection. Like, you know, I may not speak fluent Vietnamese, but I still find some kind of like some lessons to learn from doing this kind of research. So I think it's kind of like a big important question. I feel like a lot of people don't realize. But I feel like it's as equally as important as, you know, putting your effort into designing.
That's so wonderful. I totally agree, like, especially when you're, as a designer, you're constantly fighting burnout. If you wanna fight burnout, you gotta care, you know? And then sometimes you take a break from caring, that's exhausting too. But I think any opportunity that you can use to build those connections with your community, like that's the life juice, for sure. Yeah. And I'll say too that, one of the perks that comes from my job is that they've paid for me to go to the peer conference, which was like 5 days in San Francisco in a hotel, like all meals paid. The conference itself tickets were $600, so it felt like a real like opportunity. And when I was there at Creating Change, surrounded by 3,000 plus queer activists centering the voices of disabled people, and trans people of color, like pretty much every time I talk about it, I start to cry because it felt like we were gonna take over the world. And I was like, this is why I wanted to be a designer. Like, yes, it's about all of the theory that I'm honestly amazing at. But really it's like, I wanted to teach people, and I wanted to teach people in a way that was accessible, and pictures are pretty accessible.
Thank you for sharing some of your experiences and your obstacles that are very personal. And I think that you're very brave for sharing it with us. And I just hope that you work out in the end and that you don't have to, you know, explore into that same struggle. And hopefully your supervisor will see you light or something and stop. That way, I mean, it's like
Yeah.
you know, recognize that what she said was hurtful. So
Yeah.
But yeah, I think like since the topic of you know this talk is portfolio showcase, I think something to think about is like what you like as a designer, what do you want to take away from looking at Kit and Bekah's work, and like what do you think that you would bring to your community, and like what do you identify, and how can you help whatever you're heavily interested in with your, you know, your service as a designer.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having us.
Bye.